Sean McDermott has been fired by the Buffalo Bills, and major changes are coming to Buffalo. Stevie, what was your initial reaction to the firing?
Did McDermott put this team together? I'm confused.
I'm totally with Stevie. And when this news came down, guys, I was stunned. I did not expect a move of this magnitude this late in the coaching cycle, after the divisional round, after the way it went down for the Bills against the Broncos. But the more and more I think about it, and it's been marinating for me, I wonder if there's something a little bit more sinister at hand here. Is it really about the results of Saturday, or do the Buffalo Bills just need a fall guy here? And it was one of two options, right? It was Brandon Beane, their GM, or it was Sean McDermott, their coach. And Brandon Beane won the power dynamic. Not only does he remain as GM, he in fact gets a promotion, which I think might be the most stunning thing of this entire process.
This is Broken Table. Hein, Stevie, AK, and yeah, we heard whispers of a power struggle all year, that these two were clashing, and we weren't quite sure who would come out on top, or if anything would even be done. But Stevie, I'll go right to you on this. Did the Bills fire the wrong guy today?
You know where I stand, just like in the intro, brother. I don't feel like McDermott put this team together. It was Brandon Beane who put this team together. Now if they were successful, he should get a promotion, yes. However, they weren't successful in a season where they were supposedly the Super Bowl champions or winners for this year, and they failed that. So you get rid of the guy who's the manager of the men, not the creator of the team. I'm baffled.
So we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and when we consider one of the most seminal moments of the Buffalo Bills, especially for this year, remember the trade deadline? We were talking about Jalen Waddle and the Bills' reluctance to give up the 2026 first-round pick. They wanted to give up the 2027 first. Miami said thanks, but no thanks. And then in the ensuing days, Brandon Beane comes out and says, we have a championship roster. Sean McDermott asked the same question. I believe the exact quote was, I love this team. Not exactly agreeing with Brandon Beane. So I think you could look at it two ways, right? Brandon Beane, did he put together a championship roster, which he believes, or was Sean McDermott not given enough pieces by Brandon Beane? I think you could make a case for both, but I'm definitely leaning in Stevie's direction. Beane is more to blame than McDermott. The fact that he not only was retained, but also promoted is staggering to me. It makes very little sense.
Yeah, the promotion to president of football operations. Here's a very damning stat about Beane from Ben Solak. Since drafting Josh Allen in 2018, the Bills have drafted 56 players. 2 of them have made Pro Bowls, James Cook and Dawson Knox. So that is a crazy stat. But if we're going to play the other side of this, McDermott's defense in 8 playoff losses, 28.9 points allowed per game, 1.75 sacks per game, 5 total takeaways. A defensive end hasn't had a sack in a playoff loss since Jerry Hughes in 2020. So I think, like most things, there's nuance to this, and I believe both guys are sort of to blame. And I also think if we're just looking at Saturday, Josh Allen is to blame for that loss as well. But at the same time,
the referees.
The referees, whatever. But Josh turned it over 4 times. And yes, I know you aren't in that game without Josh Allen and him putting up 30 points. But there's a lot of blame to go around. I'm shocked that it was just McDermott. I kind of thought both guys would be let go if you were going to let go of anybody. But I think to your point, there was a power struggle, and it looks like Beane has the ear of the Pagulas, and that's sort of what happened.
And sometimes when you cozy up to the boss, like we do at FanDuel, we love our friends at FanDuel, they give you good things. And for Brandon Beane, that's exactly what he received. Again, the draft record speaks to itself. The trade deadline this year was a huge missed opportunity, especially when you look at what the Buffalo Bills were putting out at receiver each and every week leading into the playoffs, and certainly in that divisional round game. I mean, look who the Bills were targeting in overtime. Brandon Cooks, who was cut by the New Orleans Saints, and McCole Hardman, who was elevated from the practice squad. That's what Josh Allen had at his disposal, and they still almost won. So you could look at it two ways, but for me, I mean, I just don't think that Brandon Beane gave Sean McDermott enough. And you lose to Mahomes a number of times, you lose to Joe Burrow, and now you lose to Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. There have to be consequences. But frankly, I think the wrong guy was fired. If anything, it was all or nothing for me. And I think the Buffalo Bills made a misstep here, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they proceed.
Okay, so Stevie, let me bring you in on this. I'm just going to name, this is since they lost Diggs, here's who Brandon Beane has brought in to support Josh Allen. Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Chase Claypool, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Amari Cooper, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, Tyrell Shavers, Gabe Davis, Mecole Hardman, Brandon Cooks. When you hear a list like that of the receivers brought in to help Josh Allen, how is it not Brandon Beane who's let go today?
Yeah, that's the same thing. So I'm going to just say scapegoat. That's a word that just popped in my head listening to AK speak and listening to you give your rundown. I feel like McDermott was the scapegoat because you added the stat, 2 Pro Bowl players out of 56 guys that was drafted. That means the development is not there. They're not developing players. And that's something that I've been saying all season long with Josh Allen, not even everybody else, just Josh Allen. Can you develop Josh to become a game manager, a playmaking game manager? And obviously they couldn't do that because the offense was scripted by Joe Brady. Every play was scripted by Joe Brady. So therefore I see no development in Josh calling any plays and doing things that he should put his team in the best position, because at the end of the game, like AK also brought up, Josh is passing it to guys that wasn't on his team for the past, not even the start of this season. But like AK said, I'm finished with that. It's all or nothing. You either let go of all of them or you either keep them. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I stand.
Well, and that has to be a major concern for Bills fans here, that Brandon Beane's leading this whole operation and has been given such a massive commitment by ownership. The next head coach, at least in part, will be selected by Brandon Beane. And that's clearly the next huge question, in that, sure, McDermott's out, and it could be an enticing proposition here, depending on who they ultimately hire. I know FanDuel has Brian Daboll as
he's the favorite, and he's dropping.
Odds-on favorite. Yeah. And, of course, ties to Buffalo, was the OC. And you think back to 13 seconds 3 years ago when Daboll opted
They maybe should have fired McDermott then and promoted Daboll then.
And that was certainly a possibility. You wonder, perhaps, if the Pagulas are thinking, all right, we have a chance at a revision.
We'll get to the next possible head coaches in a minute. I just want to ask one more question. Regardless of Beane, let's take Beane out of this completely. Did McDermott deserve to be fired?
98-50 in the regular season, 8-8 in the postseason. With the stats you mentioned,
and
defensively,
you heard the stats, yeah.
At some point in time, as good as these Bills teams have been, especially over the last 6 years, where they have the most points scored, the fewest points allowed,
that
the
was
best
crazy.
record, best points percentage, everything. It's been an incredible regular season team. But at some point, you just need a change.
Yeah.
And I don't know who it's going to be. I think there's a lot of intriguing candidates out there. I don't really have an issue with moving on from Sean McDermott. As good as he's been, and as good as this culture change has been for the Bills, we remember Rex Ryan and Anthony Lynn back in 2016. This franchise has been completely overhauled to becoming one of the most preeminent franchises in the National Football League. But they keep losing in the playoffs. And at some point in time, you have enough kicks of the can. I have no issue with moving on from McDermott. My issue lies with their decision with Beane.
So, and I said this, I remember after the Texans game last year, after the embarrassing way in which they lost, I brought up, for the Raptors, I brought up Dwayne Casey.
Yep.
When the Raptors, Dwayne Casey built a culture, but they need to get over the hump. They fired him. They brought in Nick Nurse. They won a title. Today, everyone's using that same sort of example, but with Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy built a championship caliber team in Tampa, could not get over the hump. They bring in John Gruden to win a Super Bowl. I think that very well could happen with this Bills team next year, regardless of the poor roster talent. But Stevie, if we're taking Beane completely out of this, did McDermott deserve to be fired today?
I'm going to say personally, no. And this is why I say no. McDermott should have stayed, and because he's the manager of the guys of the team. He's not calling the plays. I'm not sure if he's calling the defenses or not. But I thought it was Babbage calling the defense and Joe Brady calling the offense. So when you say, hey, McDermott's defense is giving up this, and this, actually it's Babbage. You know what I mean? So I feel like Babbage should be getting out of here. If Coach McDermott was like Chan Gailey, where he was calling the offense, but we also had an offensive coordinator, and yeah, you can fire him because he's in control of that. But McDermott is a manager of the locker room, I would say. And but to close out on that, Hein, like you said, some guys get teams there, and you need somebody else to put them over the hump. Maybe that's what needs to be done here. So I mean, it's a fair assessment. But yeah, personally, I feel like it was the wrong one.
Yeah, we talk about the concept of all or nothing, right? To keep McDermott and fire Beane doesn't really make much sense either, because if you're bringing in a new GM, it's only fair to allow him to have his own coach.
Yes, exactly.
So that's where all or nothing really sinks in even more.
So, and it's funny with the blame game. I think we can put a little bit of that blame in that game specifically, Back to Brandon Beane, though. Everybody was talking about it. The Darius Slay fiasco. You think you're getting Darius Slay. You then have to cut Jamarcus Ingram, who had an interception yesterday, and who is on the field. Credit to Sean Payton, who took advantage of 2 key injuries where you get a safety injury, instantly attack it. But Dane Jackson is not on the field if Brandon Beane does not make that move for Darius Slay, and you still have Jamarcus Ingram. So even when McDermott's D is costing you in that game, the players he has out there, specifically in that example, is because of Brandon Beane.
That's totally fair.
Hey guys, I'm confused that did he not contact Darius Slay to see if he wanted to come to Buffalo?
He was on the
Like,
sidelines in Philadelphia, Darius Slay.
But Stevie, like, speak to that, because you know what I mean? You guys have agents. If you're the GM, aren't you reaching out and say, hey, we're going to put a claim on you? What's going to happen? And maybe even if he says, hey, I'm not coming, you still might take a chance, but then, like, I don't know.
You don't get rid of your player, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get rid of a player on the roster.
Or not a player at the same position if you think it's a 50-50. Like, send someone else down or something. But that right there is a perfect example of Beane's moves costing McDermott's D, but the fault ultimately lands on McDermott.
No, you're right. I mean, think back last year, the Bills gave up a 3rd-round pick for Amari Cooper. That was a complete disaster. This year, what do they really do at receiver? And look who the Bills are targeting in these crucial moments. And the simultaneous catch. Is Jalen Waddle making that grab? I think so. You got to save on to that.
Well, we know Devontae Adams is making that grab because we saw the same thing happen as well.
Exactly. So the blame on Saturday, I mean, years gone by, there's been so many playoff failures for the Buffalo Bills. It runs deep. But the fact that Beane just emerges unscathed here and gets given a big, fancy new title, and Sean McDermott's looking for his next head coaching gig is just staggering to me. It really is.
So one more note on Beane, and this really shocked me because I don't know. I've always kind of liked Beane. I thought Beane was a good GM, but lately it's sort of fallen off. So here is his last 3 drafts. The good players taken: Hairston, Walker, Hawes last year, Cole Bishop in 2024, only one guy, and Kincaid and Osiris Torrance in 2023. So that's 3 great picks, 1 good pick, 2 question marks. That is just nowhere near good enough. And I think he's kind of dining out still on that 2021 or 2022 draft where he got Cook, Bernard, Shakir, Benford. Like,
it's a good draft.
That's a great draft. But those last 3 years, like literally 22 years ago, the only player who's making any kind of contribution is Cole Bishop.
That's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
It's not good enough. And that's why I think it was a very questionable decision that was made at One Bills Drive today. And I mean, listen, they're going to have to get it right ASAP. And could they use their 2026 first to
Kyle Shanahan, bring him in.
Bring in a coach or bring in a number 1 receiver or a top-notch pass rusher? These are all very important things that the Buffalo Bills need. Their pass rush was non-existent on Saturday against the Denver Broncos. We know the issues with receiver. We know the issues with the salary cap.
To your point, though, and that is why I still do put some blame on McDermott, because in all of those playoff losses, they are not getting anywhere near as many sacks as they need to get.
You're right.
Why do you put it on McDermott when Babbage is the caller of the defense? He calls soft coverage on 2nd and 7.
The third and 11 zone. The 3rd and 11 zone coverage was.
There was multiple times where he went back to the old ways, and also Portland Sutton, isn't he the number 1 receiver for the Denver Broncos? Why is Taron Johnson guarding him? We went 5 straight weeks where we challenged Christian Benford to cover the main receiver, and he was successful at it. He even made a play in that game. And then you get down to it, and it's the 4th quarter or overtime, and then you don't have your best corner on the best receiver. I don't know if that's McDermott. That's got to be Babbage. You know what I mean? Maybe. But then I'll say McDermott can leave, because if you see that, you should be the head coach and say, no, we need this to happen, or we need this to be changed. So, I mean, it's fair for him to go, but it just doesn't make sense to me. It's all scapegoat moves to me.
I think ultimately when you're the head coach, but you're a defensive-minded head coach, and there were whispers earlier in the year of like, has McDermott started calling the plays on defense? You need to override that then. You need to be the one to say no. But now,
in overtime, especially, yes.
But if we're going to go back to the blame game, here's what Brandon Beane has invested in that defensive line that can't get any sacks. So, Bills picks on the defensive line since 2019. 1 first, 3 seconds, 2 thirds, 1 fourth, including a 2, 3, and 4 in last year's draft.
And 0 sacks.
If you're investing that much draft capital into your defensive line who can't get any pressure, and like, credit, Deion Walker has been awesome this year. That was a great pick for him. Ed Oliver was hurt, whatever, but Joey Bosa, kind of fell off of a cliff. Russo's been good. He's been making plays. AJ Epinesa, I like the way Epinesa plays. He's always getting hands up. He's batting balls down, but they are not getting enough. They had a good pressure rate all year, but the sacks just weren't there. And ultimately that also has to fall on Beane, but I think also falls on McDermott.
Yeah. I'll back you on that one with McDermott also figuring out the talent to put on your team because, when you talk about scouting coordinators and the scouting staff within the building, they're ultimately hired by McDermott. They're hired by Beane, but they're chosen by McDermott. So those guys that scouting these players, I mean, you got to be able to see the tangibles in these guys. And are they X factors or are they fillers, role fillers? And, so yeah, you gotta give McDermott that slap on the wrist also because you ultimately assembled this scouting staff also. So everybody kind of have to go. If McDermott's going, I'm assuming both offensive and defensive coordinators are going and the scouting staff is going because we need a whole new regime in there to scout these guys. As you see, the draft's been not good. I would say not good. No stats are getting the Bills better from the draft picks that we have, and it's evident. It's the scouting staff.
Well, funny you should say that you think that the OC and DC will be gone because the OC might be the head coach.
Could happen.
Because I know. He's there. From what the reporting we're seeing early, the names I'm seeing popped up the most is Dable, Joe Brady, and Davis Webb, who's the quarterbacks coach, passing game coordinator in Denver, who has ties to Buffalo. Let's just bring up the FanDuel odds here, and let's look at who FanDuel has as the favorites here. Brian Dable, Clint Kubiak, Mike McDaniel, Joe Brady, Mike McCarthy, Brian Flores, Mike LaFleur, Bill Belichick, who was actually Rex Ryan's pick. Rex Ryan today on Get Up.
No, he did not.
He said, I want Bill Belichick with Brian Dable as OC.
Jordan Hudson as the defensive coordinator. So, you know what? Let me ask you this, Chris. If you are the Pagulas, you're Brandon Beane trying to figure out who you want as your next head coach, are you thinking an offensively minded guy or a defensively minded guy? Because on that list, I mean, Chris Shua is another guy, the DC of the Rams, who's very popular. Halfley in Green Bay, another guy who's very popular from a defensive side. So is there a world in which they hire a defensive mind and maybe bring in a new OC, maybe keep Joe Brady there? I don't know. Or do you want to see one of those eclectic Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan thinkers? Well, where do you stand on that?
So I'm honestly torn on this because part of me is like, I'd take Brian Flores as a head coach if you're getting someone like a Mike McDaniel or a Dable as your OC.
Exactly.
So I think if we can't get an offensive-minded head coach, you better be overpaying for a great OC then. And that would mean a McDaniel or a Dable. Now, Clint Kubiak, I would also love as a head coach. I would also take Flores as a DC. There's so many interesting options out there. The one that not enough people are talking about, to me, is Davis Webb. Here's a Davis Webb quote.
How old's Davis Webb?
He played for the Bills.
Oh, I know.
Here's a quote from him, and this is for Peter Schrager posted this, but he said, quote, "I love Buffalo. It's my favorite place I've ever played. My best friend is the starting quarterback over there." So Davis Webb was getting contention for a head coaching job. Might be a little much for him, but I don't know. I'm torn with what I would want. I just know if you're not going to bring in an offensive-minded head coach, you better be getting one of these great OCs.
And we haven't even mentioned Mike McCarthy, another offensive coach.
Don't even.
I'm just saying, he's got to be on that list.
No.
He did win a Super Bowl. You got to give him some credit there. I know it was a long time ago. Stevie, who comes to mind first for you? You heard the list of candidates per FanDuel. Is there someone out there that piques your interest?
Dable is my favorite. He was here and he left. He went out to New York Giants and they got rid of him. I know he's got a lot of attitude. We know his history. We know he's got an offensive mind. And he's got an offensive mind, but he's got the fire for a defense, for the players. So, I'm going to go with somebody that we know and we're comfortable with, and that's BD.
We talked about 13 seconds. Dable was part of that staff. Of course, leaves and takes the job as head coach of the Giants. Can we just overlook what a disaster it was at the end there?
Hold on, but let's pause for a second because took a Daniel Jones-led team to the playoffs.
Won a game.
And then and then got smoked the next game. And then it all kind of fell apart. I don't really know how much of that should fall on Dable. And if he's given, he has a great relationship with Josh Allen. Also, too, guys can learn from the failures of their previous head coaching experience. That's why, and this might be crazy, I wouldn't even, if Mike McDaniel's talked about as a potential for a Bills head coach, I wouldn't think that's crazy just because we know how bright of an offensive mind he is.
Personally, if you're talking about Dable, slide him in as the OC once again and hire a defensively minded
Yeah.
But what about if you go, like this is, I wrote down on my notes, my dream scenario. Clint Kubiak head coach, Dable OC, Flores DC.
Don't those two kind of cancel each other out, Kubiak and Dable? They're both going to want to call the plays,
but
right?
if your Dable isn't going to Buffalo with Josh Allen and be like, hey, I'm going to go there for a year, we're going to build a great offense, and then I'm going to get my next head coaching job.
Could be.
Like, I don't think you'll get the power struggle there. And a note on Flores too. If Flores doesn't get a head coaching job, he's technically a free agent, so wouldn't have to have any permission from the Vikings to leave for a lateral move. He could come over and take that DC job without any issues.
Okay, Stevie, I want to pitch you this idea. I know this might sound crazy because Mike Tomlin has 2 years left on his deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Stevie, would you be willing to give up draft compensation to make that a possibility? Mike Tomlin is the new head coach of the Buffalo Bills.
You know what? At this point, what we've seen with the past 6-7 years, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? You know, Tomlin has shown he's been in the playoffs 19 straight seasons, and you know, he's a defensive-minded guy. He's a player's coach, similar to Dable, I would say. You know, they got that same vibe where they come in and they can spark a team, whether they're on offense or defense, but the attitude and the aura that they bring will uplift the squad. So, I mean, I'm for it. Although I know it may not happen, though. I feel like Tomlin's going to rest, come back in a season or two. But, yeah, I'm for it.
Is there anybody else out there?
Just real quick, you can't give up draft compensation for Tomlin. If you're going to give up draft compensation for Kyle Shanahan, sure. Give up a first for Kyle Shanahan. I don't think that's realistic at all either, but there's no way you can give up draft compensation for Tomlin. But go ahead.
No, I was going to pitch the name Kyle Shanahan, who I believe has 1 year left on his deal with San Francisco, a rather
I would give up a first for him.
Unceremonious end to their season. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be very interested. That's your head coach for the next 20 years.
What's your ideal scenario then? Who do you want?
I like a young offensive guru paired with a grizzled veteran DC.
Okay.
Kubiak Flores would work for me. I mean, I also don't hate the idea of hiring a Hafley or a Shula, guys who are currently defensive coordinators, and pairing them.
The shine off of Shula has really come off over those last two games.
I think that's fair. There's also the passing game coordinator with the Rams. I'm not even going to try to say his name. Shields.
Yeah. He's on the list.
Yeah, he's a sexy name as well because the Rams have had so much success offensively with Stafford this year. But I think this is the exciting part of this coaching search for the Buffalo Bills is that there are so many opportunities out there. But I don't think you make this move on McDermott unless you have a pretty damn good idea as to who you're going to hire.
I think you have to. I think they must have been doing their due diligence if this were to happen. But if you're John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski's agent, isn't that a mistake? Wouldn't it? And I think Stefanski would have been a very nice fit. But I'm kind of shocked that those two guys didn't wait until after this weekend to make a decision on that.
I think it speaks to how surprising this decision was, right? I don't think anybody really saw this coming, even how ugly it was in overtime for the Buffalo Bills on Saturday. But I think that Stevie speaks to just the overall shock around the NFL that guys like Stefanski and Harbaugh were taking jobs. I'm sure they assumed, there's no way the Bills job becomes available, right?
Bills players are both anonymously and out in the open very shocked by this. And I saw Jordan Phillips tweet that he was saying McDermott's one of the best coaches he's ever played for. So I think the team is shocked. But Stevie, if you're the Pagulas, do you need Josh Allen's sign off before you're firing McDermott?
As owners, ultimately, no, you don't. But
is it smart to go to Allen? Do you think they went to Allen before they did this?
It would be wise to, and I don't believe they did. It would be wise to because I feel like Josh would definitely say no. Keep McDermott. Maybe bring in other coordinators or coaches around that can help this team grow. You know, maybe it was a lot on Joe Brady's plate, calling every single call, not developing Josh to be able to see a defense and then call whatever he wanted out of the playbook. So maybe it's not on him to develop guys. It's on the QB coach or the QB coach's assistants, the receivers coach. You know what I mean? That type is what I'm looking at. You know, obviously the head guys are going to get cut off, but I think is more within the line, between the lines that we're missing on the coaches that's not developing these players right.
Real quick, Stevie, I saw your reaction from before when we mentioned Joe Brady. Like how are you feeling if Joe Brady is the head coach of the Bills next year?
All right, if Joe Brady is the head coach, I would first be upset because obviously what he did with Josh, it's too controlling. You know, the offense is too controlling. He's not opening it up, and but at the end of the day, maybe it might help him because he might have more time to Nah, I can't even soften it up. I'm not gonna like it. I'm not gonna like it.
No, well, and it sounds like Brady's a legit candidate for a number of openings. I know he's had 3 separate interviews, including maybe Baltimore. So maybe you'll see him back in Buffalo in a different capacity next year. But yeah, Brady, I just don't like the idea of retreads and recycling different things. I want something fresh. Like, again, the name Clint Kubiak really makes a lot of sense. What Seattle's been able to do this year on offense, I mean, turning Jackson Smith and Jigba into arguably the best receiver in the NFL. It's just been really, really impressive. And he's a young guy, an exciting name. You pair him with, again, a grizzled vet of a defensive coordinator. I think that makes all the sense in the world. And that'd be very exciting for Buffalo Bills fans. And every year you go into a season with Josh Allen, you have a chance to win the Super Bowl. But clearly next year there's going to be significant change within that organization.
Now, and I agree with you.
And a new stadium.
I like Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady did a good job calling that game Saturday. We saw the hook and ladder for the third time.
It still works.
Bills lost all those games though. But I agree with you to the point that I don't want Joe Brady as the head coach because I think you need that fresh start. And I want a full clean slate here with Josh. And yeah, I think Joe Brady is a good OC, contrary to what many Bills fans think. And I think he could be a good head coach, but not for this team right now. But you mentioned Clint Kubiak. That's who I want. Let's transition because we got a couple of championship games coming up. Seattle just looked like a wagon. How you feel? What's your Super Bowl? Let's hear it right now.
I did predict the Rams at the beginning of the season here at Broken Table. It was a 20-1, 25-1. I'm sticking with the Rams. I am. And was it pretty against Chicago? Certainly not. I thought McVay did a dreadful job.
He was awful.
Calling plays against the Bears, but they emerged, and as dominant as Seattle's defense looked against San Francisco, that's a team that was just decimated on both sides of the ball. The Rams are a lot healthier. I think they're a lot deeper. I think they're certainly better quarterbacked, and I think they have a better coach as well. I like the Rams to emerge in the NFC and the AFC. Do I have to watch Jarrett Stidham play? Seriously?
Let's go back. Let's look at history because
Nick Foles.
No, Jeff Hostetler won a Super Bowl with the Giants in 1990, and Nick Foles. Do you see Nick Foles' tweet?
I did.
The Nick Foles tweet is hilarious. But okay, so Stevie, what do you think in the NFC? Who do you like, the Rams or the Seahawks?
I really like the Rams coach. I like McVay, how you get down. I love Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, Matt Stafford. However, I'm going to go with Seattle. Seattle seemed to be more balanced. I feel like the Seattle also has the X factor in Rashid Shaheed, another guy that the Buffalo Bills could have had on special teams.
Exactly.
So there it is. I'm going to go with Seattle to defeat the LA Rams out of the NFC.
What about in the AFC? I'm guessing just because of no Bo Nix that you're not giving Denver much of a shot?
Yeah, well, no, not because of Bo Nix. I'm cool with Stephon Diggs, and I'm going to support Diggs. I'm gonna support Diggs, not the Patriots.
Yes, good. That's the correct thing to say here on Broken Table. But I mean, just from a Denver perspective, just so heartbreaking. Bo Nix played really well against the Buffalo Bills, had a great season, and all of a sudden, backup Jarrett Stidham hasn't thrown a pass since 2023. And they are 5.5-point dogs on FanDuel at home in the AFC title game, which is unbelievable. And it doesn't have a lot to do with what New England did against Houston. I mean, CJ Stroud, I don't know what he was doing in that game.
There's almost questions of if you almost can't come back from that if you're CJ Stroud.
It was really, really ugly. I don't think New England is the greatest team, which makes it even more painful.
Is there an easier path that a team has ever had to go through than what the Patriots have had to go through?
Well, so you get a team with no offensive line in the Chargers. You get a team with no quarterback in Stroud, no receiver, and no tight end in Houston. And now you get Jarrett Stidham and the Denver Broncos, who can't run the ball at all.
As well as the easiest schedule in the last 30 years in the regular season.
Must be nice. What a run for Patriots fans. It never ends. And you know what the most infuriating thing is from a Buffalo perspective? That there's a pretty damn good chance that Drake May is going to play in a Super Bowl for Josh Allen. That makes me want to vomit. But don't worry, I won't.
But it also, doesn't this just show that maybe going full circle with the head coaching stuff, just how quickly you can turn things around? Like, Vrabel was available last year. Do you think Vrabel would have looked good as a Bills head coach?
Ben Johnson was available last year. Yeah.
Vrabel takes this team, and credit to the Patriots and credit to Vrabel, but Vrabel takes a second-year guy and leads him to an AFC championship. And credit to the Patriots. They had Mayo locked in. That was their guy. And they're like, no, we've seen enough after 1 year. We're firing this guy, and we're bringing Vrabel in. So this does show just how much a good coaching hire can change things.
Yeah, maybe holding on too long can really be a major issue for you from a Buffalo perspective. And if they made a move a couple of years ago, maybe Vrabel and Ben Johnson are coach of the Buffalo Bills as opposed to person X or person Y. So sometimes indecision can really bite you.
Indecision is decision. All right. Steve, before we get out, let's just remind you, wake up to FanDuel's new month-long celebration. We're talking Fanuary. They've got everything NFL playoffs, Super Bowl, and favorite pop culture novelty bets. Takia's going to have her own Super Bowl novelty bet we're all excited about. But it's Fanuary on FanDuel, so get there and make all of those great fun bets.
Can I ask Stevie one question?
Is it about Fanuary?
It is not about Fanuary. We'll get back to Fanuary momentarily. Did Brandon Cooks catch the ball, Stevie, on Saturday night?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes, legally caught the ball. He secured it, and his knee, his ankle, his shin, his shoulder hit the ground, and then McMillan got on top and yanked it as he rolled over. That's a touchdown. That's a completed pass, and the refs got us on that one.
It's the most debated play. I think it's going to go down as one of the most debated plays in NFL history because you see very smart and reputable people on both sides making compelling arguments in favor of it or against it. And again, I don't know.
But Devontae Adams made the same play and they
but,
called the catch.
But they both can be wrong. I think both were catches. I'm with you. But man, the Cooks play was...
When his knee and shoulder touch the ground, you're considered down. That's a catch.
Survive the ground. What is it? Whatever that means.
If 80%,
that's what that game will be called, the survive the ground game.
If 80% of football fans are watching and think that it's a catch, then you're wrong. Then your catch rule is stupid, and you need to change it.
That is totally fair. You know what was the most egregious part of that was Walt Anderson coming out and saying he's like the NFL officiating spokesperson. Coming out and saying, like big part of it was we were just trying to move the game along. And I saw this clip. I'm like, dude. Move the game along. Do you know the implications? I think Sean McDermott's unemployed because of that call. And think of how much money was missed out in a potential Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills because you're trying to move the game along as opposed to, I don't know, get the call correct. Seems like a lot more important part for me.
They spent 5 minutes in Jacksonville figuring out if there was a second on the clock for a field goal.
I know.
Before half, and you couldn't do that.
You got to move the game along. I'm not going to be 2020's on.
I'm not blame the officials guy because there was so many factors in that game. I think if James Cook doesn't fumble, game goes a different way. If that Josh Allen terrible turnover doesn't happen, game goes a different way. But the play to me that not enough people are talking about.
Aaron Johnson.
No, Brandon Cooks before the end.
That was PI. That was
clear
PI.
Pass interference.
Oh yeah.
And if that's called, Josh sneaks it into the end zone, Bills win that game.
Game
the
over.
fact that and Riley Moss is the most penalized player in football, that is clear pass interference, as we've seen it our entire lives, and it is not called. And you know what? If you're not going to call that, and you're going to keep consistency, then you can't call the other two. You can't call Aaron Johnson, you can't call Trey White. Just give us a little bit of consistency with that, please.
The refereeing was a complete disgrace as far as I'm concerned. The inconsistency, the Cooks play, the PIs on Buffalo, the non-PIs on Denver is a total joke, and everybody involved should be ashamed of themselves.
Stevie?
I'm going to say the same thing. I would actually say Trey White's was a pass interference.
Yeah.
It was really every time that was going to be a pass interference. However, that play was after the Taron Johnson's pass interference, which wasn't a pass interference, which was after the fact that they didn't call a pass interference on Riley Moss when he did pretty much the same thing. Actually, he was further down the field than Taron Johnson was, and they still didn't call it. So it was overall a screw job. And but the Trey White, that's definitely a PI every time.
The Taron Johnson one, I think was an awful call, but there was the Bosa roughing the passer anyway, so it still wouldn't have mattered as much. But if you're not gonna call Cooks, then don't call Trey White. And also, if you call Cooks properly, we're not even in a situation where the Trey White play even happens.
Put the whistle away.
Right.
It's the playoffs. Come on.
Just overall frustrating.
Even Mims.
But you know what?
Mims Jr. We didn't talk about that one. The catch from Mims Jr. on Jackson. He had two steps, then he hit the ground and bobbled the ball and recollected it. He got up and the ball wasn't even in his hand. Like he threw it to the sideline. They didn't even do no type of video review on that at all. But Calvin Johnson, Dez Bryant, Brandon Cooks, no catch, And
that's it. That's exactly my point. If we don't know what a catch is, then change the rules. Like, it's very frustrating, but you know what? We are professionals, and even though there's no more Bills games, we will still be back because Guys, we got a head coaching search now to
baby.
focus on. So we will be back next Monday following the championship Sunday. Stevie, play us out.
Yes. Hey, thank y'all for spending y'all time with us, Buffalo Bills Mafia. Unfortunately, season's over, but you can continue to lock in with the Broken Table podcast. If you got any thoughts and questions, leave it in the comments. Go Bills for life.